Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon if you're watching this in the afternoon, or even good evening. My name is Tomasz Stefanik. I'm Chief Medical Officer of the University Hospital and also a general surgeon and psychologist by some education and interests, and also a person who is involved in the quality evaluation of clinical activities of hospitals based on cooperation with Det Norske Veritas and CMJ, which is the organization in Poland devoted to accreditation, similar to the Joint Commission in the United States. So today I want to talk with you or show you some ideas about how the processes in medical context should be developed and how they should be described and what are the benefits when you have your organization and your activity presented and organized in this way. What can you learn from it, and how can you develop the possibilities for the organization? We usually talk about quality management, talking about thinking or having the visualization of the factory, maybe Ford factory, where somebody's by the line and working with some screws and adding some wheels or painting the car. But this is maybe what it originally came from, but currently it is completely different perspective. I prefer to use the concept of quality of management than the quality management, because it's not only the quality that we want to manage, but using the parameters that are connected with quality, we are able to see through the whole process, the whole activity of the organization, and being able to define and set goals to different aspects of our activity that make it all work together fine. It also enables the communication and enables the diminishing on any tensions between the parts of the organization. So as you see, it's as early as the teacher of the Alexander the Great, so Aristotle, who had the idea on how quality of anything has to be implemented. It cannot be a single act, single activity. It has to be a perpetual, habituous activity, the everyday small steps that lead us to great changes, or even if the changes are not so great, and if they are coming one after another, this will lead and this will provide a substantial change with time. In general knowledge, the quality management system is being described in the shortest bar by the short name ISO, which is actually not exactly what it is about, and I will just explain in a small additional video this to you. But this is usually not really very clearly understood by everybody. Mostly because of very typical languages being used in the ISO norms and the ISO communication. So the quality assurance or quality management is being considered like something aside from the normal activity of the organization, especially is in organizations such as hospital, where we all believe that we are doing something which is connected with mission, and our activity connected and devoted to helping the patients is much higher in ethical point of view than something that can be seen from the perspective of factory of cars or mustard. So there are lots of funny memes about this, and obviously it can be boring, but I think if somebody understands the whole idea behind it, spends an hour or two talking about this, and then looks at it from his own perspective, it can be very fruitful for everybody, for the huge organizations such as university, hospital, of course, but also for everyday activity at home. Uh, you can organize things in a way that that make it more efficient, and wasting time is not being so a problem. There are things such as Tokimeki, which is the organization of your surrounding, making order everywhere. The Japanese people that don't have too much space in the small apartments, they organize what they have in this way, and the clothes and the cutlery and anything, and that makes them being able to achieve their goals, even if they are as easy as cutting the onion, much faster and more efficiently than if they didn't have that so-called internal home system, which is also something like a very, very little ISO. So let's listen together, and let's have a look at the video that's been prepared by some of the authors, trying to explain in easy way what is ISO and what is the quality management systems and what can be potential benefits.
What is ISO 9001? Well, first you need to ask, what is ISO or ISO? The organization known as ISO began informally in 1946 when delegates from 25 countries met in London after the war and decided to create a new international organization for the purpose of having an international body to facilitate the international coordination and unification of industrial standards. In February 1947, the organization known as ISO officially began operations. Because a name like International Organization for Standardization would have different acronyms in different languages, like IOS in English, or OIN in French, or MOS in Russian, it was decided to give it the short form ISO, or ISO, from the Greek word isos, meaning equal, as in isometric, isosceles. So, no matter what the language, the official acronym is always ISO. Since its beginnings in 1947, ISO has published over 19,500 international standards covering almost every aspect of technology and manufacturing and services. To take care of standard development, ISO has members from 165 countries and 3,368 technical bodies as of today. More than 150 people work full-time for ISO's Central Secretariat in Geneva, Switzerland. Okay, so what is ISO 9001? Well, to understand what is ISO 9001, it is necessary to first understand what is a quality management system. A quality management system, or QMS, is a set of documented policies, procedures, and responsibilities organized into a structured system of processes to assist an organization in realizing its quality vision, goals, and objectives. And so ISO established a standard called ISO 9001 for quality management systems. It comprises a set of generic standard requirements governing the quality management systems of certified companies or other organizations. Specially accredited auditors, known as certification body CB auditors, are authorized to award a certificate of compliance to the ISO 9001-2008 standard, which is the one current in 2014. This certification must be reviewed annually and renewed every 3 years. Although it is called a standard, one of the foundational requirements of this standard is that its implementation shall be based on a system of dynamic processes rather than a set of static standards. In summary, the ISO 9001 standard requires procedures for the following activities to be documented and evidence maintained that they are being followed. Control of documents and records, for example, the gathering of customer requirements and the recording of product testing. Control of non-conforming product, for example, to prevent defects and rejects from being sent to customers. Continual improvement through corrective and preventive actions, necessary when mistakes have been made to prevent them from happening again. Internal audits, to show that the organization takes seriously its commitment to quality and conformance to the ISO 9001 standard. Maintaining well-implemented compliance with the ISO 9001 standard helps an organization focus on meeting customer requirements and exceeding customer expectations with processes that are ever more effective and efficient.
So as you saw, the whole idea of quality management is connected with perceiving the organization as a quality management system. So a set of different parts that cooperate together in order to achieve a common goal and to act along the policies that are determined. So the quality management system, as you heard, can be perceived as also as the set of rules and procedures how to act according to those goals, according to the policies, and in order to reach the goals. But the truth is that this is the way we want to work. This is the substantial concept that quality management system in every organization has to carry. If we don't see this as the way that we will be working in order to achieve the goals, and that the whole quality activity will not work in our organization. So the mentality and understanding how it should work and what it means is completely essential for the implementation of the whole concept. But the truth is not always so positive, and funny thing is that most of the people that do not understand, but they are pushed by the management of the organization to implement ISO or quality QMS. That's how they really see it from their perspective, if they are not sufficiently taught and prepared for this. So they see there is a lots of papers, all the procedures, all the papers, documents that you have to read and follow. They are all around, and you just don't have enough time to have a look at this. And usually they have also the special structure that makes it completely unreadable and ununderstandable. So why should I read it if I cannot understand? And I do it anyway. So what's the bother? The other perspective is that controlling everything is the main purpose of the quality management system. So the management of the organization wants to know what we are doing, and if we are not having too much breaks, or we are not having too much lunch or cigarette breaks, or maybe they just want to know everything, and we don't know why. Mostly because they want to push us, because they believe that we are not working hard enough. The other idea is that maybe that what people see about the quality management systems is this writing down and noting and documenting things that we already know for ages. So it's completely repeating a double action again and again. We've done the job and then you have to document it. It's completely crazy. And people believe that it's unnecessary waste of time, and that we don't have time anyway. We have to have more. We don't have enough time to talk with the patients and to help them. And in this situation, somebody orders us to write down things and not really wasting the time that we could do much better things during that times. And they're repeating things, and we've done the job, we have to document. Somebody has to look at this. It's just creating extra jobs for somebody. So you see, there can be a lot of negative perception about the quality management system that arises from the misunderstanding on the whole concept. Because what I believe is that nobody comes to work not willing to work good and hard and for the purpose of the organization. Because if I had this idea, I would not be coming to work at all. So I would change it. So people, they are their intention is to do good job, just to make it well, and to make it to make it in a way that will be appreciated, and to do a good change for the world. So the only thing is that we have to explain to them that quality management system is not any of those that you see now in the slide. That the quality management system is created to help them and to help the new ones to work in a way that we all believe is a good one. Yeah, the stereotypes, nevertheless, are also connected. As I said, the spying concept, the controlling concept, is very common. Everybody believes that may be the reason, and some people say it's completely out of the reason for the clinical development, because it's just noting simple facts, not creating the new ideas for the future. Somebody says it's expensive. Well, the truth is it's not expensive. Of course, there are some initial costs that you have to cover at the beginning of the activity, but then what becomes expensive are the costs of not having good quality management system in place, because you are wasting time, money, and you are wasting the satisfaction of your patients. But this is what we will be talking later about. Well, in many organizations, the documentation of the system is done in hard copies and distributed all around the place. That means that if no one is really reading it, there will be a lot of dust on it. So just a collector of dust. No one is opening it. When I come to different organizations and I have a look at the procedures they developed, and for example, there is an organization that is having ISO for 10 years, and they have edition 1 of the procedure. That means that no one is really reading it, because if you read it, you just always find something to improve, and there should be 10, 12 different new editions of the same procedures, because somebody says, no, this cannot work like that, we have to change it. Another stereotype is that the quality management system stops any innovation. It is a little bit true, but not entirely. Any is the issue. It doesn't stop any innovation. It just creates a concept how to detect and how to learn from innovation, even if they are spontaneous and not planned, but it also gives the chance to plan and innovative actions basing on what you've read or you hope that will happen. It just creates the framework for activities. Any activity, also the innovative activity, it just, as you see in all around the world, it is not now allowed to do any experiment without the permission of ethical committee. It has to be very, very strictly supervised. That means that you cannot just come to your office one day and say, okay, I will try this new drug for those patients. Maybe it will work, maybe not. But that's an innovation. You cannot stop it. Of course, I can stop you. It's just has to be ethical. It has to have the basics in the science that that leads to creation of protocol, and this protocol has to be reasonable and has to be approved by ethical committee. It cannot be crazy. So that's how I would say it may stop any innovation, but it does not stop innovation as a whole. It just creates the framework for activities, how to determine it. It demands procedures based on an abstract form. The norm is indeed abstract if you don't understand the language. If you don't speak Latin, anything written in Latin is abstract. Well, of course, this is not obligatory for any of the clinical personnel to be able to understand the ISO 9001 form, a norm language. But the role of those facilitators is to translate it into a normal language, so everybody is able to understand what it is all about. And then, by its universality, so it can be applied to any organization, production, and service, and any medical and car production. It just creates, poses, and implements very universal concepts about what should be done to avoid mistakes that has been already done in the past. So that's how it works. But of course, it has to be translated, and when somebody is preparing the procedures for the hospital, they have to be written in a way that people understand it. So that's very, very important. It's lots of demands. Well, it is. Currently, the world has a lot of demands for any organization, especially service organizations such as hospital, because people are different and people have different demands, and they have different contexts of their service, so of their sickness, and we are understanding this more and more. Currently, there is a huge shift towards the coordinated medical service. So there is somebody, a coordinator, that coordinates all the demands of the patient, which are medical, which are clinical, but they can be very, very basic, such as going out with the dog or informing somebody that the patient is in the hospital. So the demands are rising. The world is understanding that there are many things to be taken care of, and people are now not that shy to show it. At the past, when you came to hospital, you were happy to be in the hospital. Now it is an important aspect of your life, but it does not stop any others. So those other things also have to be covered. Is it difficult to implement? Depending on the situation. If you want to implement, if you are, as the hospital manager, want to invite an ISO implementation organization to bring the whole system in a suitcase and open it and say, now you work like this, it is difficult to implement. But if you start from the bottom, that takes a lot of time, that's true. But if you start from the bottom, there will be obviously much easier implementation, because people will be just documented what they do, and the thinking, if they really do it right, is it comparable to what the others do? Benchmarking. Is it comparable to the guidelines that are commonly accepted? Because maybe they have the routine that's been there for years, and now we know it's not good, and the guidelines say it should be different. So it is difficult to implement from above. It is difficult to implement in the organizations that have a lot of routine and don't want to change. It's also difficult to implement in the organization that do not want to be transparent, because ISO or QMS entirely creates the culture of transparency. Everything is seen, everything is known, everything is measured, and that's how it should work. In different organizations, the QMS implementation can be motivated by different reasons. Sometimes it's demanded by the restructuralization of the organization, fusion, or trying to cut down the expenses if the situation financially is bad. And there is somebody from like a bank coming with money saying, okay, we will support you, but that needs to be also transparent. So you see the transparency concept for somebody, for money donator, it is essential. There is a new manager coming, and he or she comes from different type of organization where QMS is a standard, which actually in medical settings in many countries is not so standard. And so this new manager comes and says, okay, now we will be working this way. Why does he do it? Or why does she do it? Because QMS creates the possibility of managing from the yard, as we call it, managing from the distance, creating the measures that will enable the management to be able to control the situation, or to stimulate the situation, or react to the situation, not being all the time in the middle of the action. So this is very important support for the top management. It is sometimes, but this is for more advanced organization, needed by a drive for improvement and hope to get the highest rank in the region. So the competence willing to achieve the highest competence in the region, or in the country, or in wherever they want. So this is very, very good, and very good motivation. If we understand that this can be achieved by QMS, not by single actions, because sometimes we have this feeling, oh, if we perform this operation as the first in the country, we will be seen as the best in the country. I don't think so. I would say with adequate PR actions, you can achieve this glimpse of glory for a moment, but if your works are not day-to-day habit, as Aristotle says, people would soon realize that this was just one shot, and all the rest is rubbish. So what I usually support, and when we are talking about our activities, okay, we can do single action with huge media activity, but we have to be aware that huge media activity creates the response from the public, and we have to be ready for this response with a quantity of the service and the quality of the service that those people who reacted to our PR movement would expect to be there. So it's responsibility and everyday work. So not something very beautiful to be in media all the time, but everyday hard work, and that it's creating the quality of the service. It also may be needed by the urge for stability of management, and as exactly in the same way how it is supporting the managerial perspective, it is also making the organization immune to the changes in the organization, in the top management. So in some hospitals, there can be a political context to the management, and this can be changing. So the organization that is strongly supported by quality management system will be not fragile enough to be changed completely when somebody new comes into the management, because the system is in place. And if it's transparent, every manager that comes in has a fast look, said, okay, this works fine, here we have to support, here we have to stop, here we have to stimulate, and that is easy and transparent. It is sometimes demanded by the change of the work environment. And if you imagine yourself coming to the organization, the hospital, when everything is based on what anybody knows. So if you ask, okay, what is the standard, how do we treat myocardial infarction in this hospital? And somebody said, oh, that is what Johnny knows. And you go to Johnny and say, Johnny, how do we do it? And Johnny says, oh, today I don't have time. Tomorrow I will tell you. And if you ask about the acute pancreatitis, oh, that's what Mary knows. And you go to Mary and Mary says, I don't like you too much. Maybe I don't have time for you today, maybe later. And you just feel like, so what should I do? And then comes the patient with myocardial infarction and another one with acute pancreatitis. And you said, and the book says I should do it like this, but there is no drug that should be here according to the book. And you just don't know what to do. And next day, Johnny comes and says, why didn't you give the drug number 12? I said, but in the book it's different. I said, well, but we always do it like this. But I didn't know. Oh, come on, you should ask. I asked you, didn't have time. So you see, this is the work environment which is completely toxic. And you just feel like lost in the middle of the desert, and there is no help from any side, because everybody has created his competence silo and doesn't want to share. So that is terrible. This is just the worst thing that can happen to anybody that comes into organization. So if the QMS is in place, everything is described. And if it's in place and it's properly implemented, everybody acts according to this. And if there are any shifts, the shifts are noted, and there is reaction to those change, which is either saying, oh no, we've done it wrong, we have to fix it, or maybe we've done it right and we have to fix it too, right? We have to create a new procedure. And obviously, for everybody who enters the organization, if you can follow all the rules and at least the basic information is clear, it's much easier to come back to work next day saying, all right, I'm ready for a situation which is unexpected. And because they already thought about it and they shared this information, they didn't want to hide it from themselves. Just they share it. So I think those are extremely important aspects that should be taken into consideration if you are thinking about implementing good QMS in place. Otherwise, it will be difficult. It will be really difficult. So today we are going to talk about what is the added value of QMS, apart from those which I mentioned, and why should we do it? How do we see the processes in the organization, and how do we measure them, and what are the differences, and is it always good or always bad, and how can we have our point of view on that? And what is actually quality concept? What does it mean? What is it? Like good quality? What does it really mean? Let's just have a look at another video that sums up a little bit of what we talk about and confirms that everybody has the same point of view. It's standardized vision of quality management system.
Does your business work the way you want it to? Are you able to measure quality consistently? Do you know how to react to reports of customer dissatisfaction? Do you really know what's happening in your business and how you get the results you get? Do you know how to improve and where to find the time to grow? Are your workforce happy? If you answer no to any of these questions, then an ISO certification will help make a difference. To reduce wastage, stop duplication, to stop having to firefight to retain customers, then you need to think and act differently. Why? Because if you always do what you've always done, you are always going to get what you always got. You need an ISO standard. Our qualitators will analyse how to improve the systems you have, what and how to report back to the management so this matches what you already do as closely as possible, while without significant alterations. They will supply the necessary training to assist the development of the procedures to reduce instances of waste and duplication, and to ensure full reporting control throughout your company, so you and all your people come together as an efficient working team. Implementing an ISO standard will gain you a happier workforce combined with a very satisfied client base, leading to enhanced financial returns. Once we have helped you achieve ISO certification, you don't need anything else, not even us.
So you see, this is of course the commercial made by a company that is producing, that is providing the knowledge to implement ISO. But it doesn't matter. It's just true. So of course you can do it yourself. You can employ somebody. You can have some facilitators or tutors or coaches, and you can have them within your organization. But the truth is, and if you don't have it, you don't know anything. So I divided our journey into 4 sets of aspects that we will be discussing together, one after another, just to go a little bit step by step. So the first thing that I would like to talk is quality as a defining the word, and something which is called main process. Also the clients and the quality measures which are needed for monitoring of the processes. So in general, the quality is being considered as the fulfillment of the requirements of the client. So if the client has some kind of requirements and they are fulfilled, he or she perceives the process, the service, the product as a product of high quality. So you can compare somebody who wants to buy a car, and depending on his perception of demands, different cars can fulfill his requirements. It can be somebody who doesn't have a huge budget, but who wants to have a car that will be working well and giving him a chance to go from point A to B, and this will direct him towards cars of different company. And somebody else wants to show his prestige with his car, and this will direct him to the cars of another company. So quality has always to be perceived by the perspective of the client. Of course, it is very important to define the clients and to be able to answer who is my client, because otherwise you will not be able to define his needs or her needs. For example, if we look at this little process of diagnostics or treatment, which is very often performed in hospitals, you will have somebody who is sick at the beginning, or undiagnosed person, and at the end of the process we will end up with somebody who is cured and somebody who is diagnosed. So this is a very very basic information about what we are doing. The main process is the construct that defines a set of activities that lead us from point A to point B, changing the context of what we produce, and we do it for money. That's the definition. So if you are looking for the processes that you are performing within your hospital, the main processes are the ones that are being financially supported by somebody who pays, and the one who pays is your client. So every process in reality has to be some kind of criteria at the entrance or an exit, because you would never know when to stop the process if you didn't have those criteria defined. So, for example, in our process, we have somebody who is sick, so he has to have some kind of symptoms. So those symptoms will be the entrance criteria for the process. Or maybe if there's somebody who needs a diagnosis basing on a CT scan, he has to have a referral letter, so we can read it and basing on that start our procedures. At the end of the process, there are also criteria that are telling us have we done the job or not. So lack of symptoms will be the criteria to define the cured person, or diagnosis obtained due to CT scan will be the criteria at the exit of a person who needed to be diagnosed and had to have this CT scan. Those criteria that are at the end are called the product criteria, product parameters, because the process produces the product which is the diagnosed person or cured person. It sounds very technical, but it's just the language. As I told you, it's if you want to understand Latin, what is written in Latin in old Roman books, you have to understand Latin, read Latin. Otherwise, you just don't read it. It's not. You cannot be. You cannot say that Latin is a bad language because whatever. No, you just have to have it, right? It's no other way. So the product criteria at the end of the process define those products which are good from those which are not good. That means they haven't been changed within the process. So in our example, we are having the CT scan trying to diagnose patients, and 95% are being diagnosed correctly and 5% are not being diagnosed at all, or B, are being diagnosed incorrectly. So you see that the efficiency of our process is 95%. This 5% can be, in situation A, unsuccessful process, or in situation B, false positive, false negative effect of the process. So even at this moment, you see how many different information for such a simple example you can obtain. You can say, all right, we are having problem at the level of the sensitivity because we haven't seen something, or specificity because we've seen something else. So that's, you see, such a simple example and so many information. All right, let's go further down. Of course, the processes are never that easy, like just one line, because there are many things, many people, many sub-organizations involved in it. So here we've got the main process divided into sub-processes, which are interconnected in the way that one has to finish for the other to start. And between them, why is it going so slow? Between them, there are also the criteria that define the moment that we can go to another sub-process. So if we finish the process of the sub-process of qualification, we've got all the information needed for hospitalization. We can send the patient for the hospitalization, where we are going to operate and take care post-operatively. And once we've believed that everything is okay, the patient doesn't need to be hospitalized any further, then we've got the criteria for going back home and home convalescence. So at every level, you can define this. So the processual map, the process map that we are going to draw is the best description what we are doing. Normally, in the organizations that are creating QMS from below, we are sitting together. It takes time. That's true. It takes time. But we sit together. We try to draw it. Try to understand what are the criteria. People are quarreling. Some people see it in a different way. Even if they work together for 20 years, sometimes they see the same things in a different way, and they have to discuss it and adjust the perspective. Otherwise, there will be no SOP, there will be no standard operating procedure. All right, so if we look at the process, we've already discussed there are the measures of the product, but also there are the parameters, the measures of the process itself, because at every stage of the process, you can think about it with some kind of numbers. For example, during the operation that we have right here, there can be a blood loss that can further determine the effect of the product. So the most important aspect for the client is the product parameters, because everybody wants to have as high level of conforming products as possible, 100%. But it never happens. And non-conforming products should be as low as possible, 0%. But what happens during the process can impact the final effect. So if, for example, the operation lasts longer because and during this operation, another parameter, there is a substantial blood loss, much higher than expected or hoped for, then the final result of the product, so the patient, can be different. It can be, for example, the postoperative complication that happens, the suppuration of the wound because the operation lasted longer, the patient temperature, body temperature went down, and the blood loss also caused the diminished immunologic response, and that resulted in suppuration of the wound. So those parameters that can be observed during the process being performed are also very, very essential for following. We usually define 3 aspects of them that have to be chosen, because you cannot measure everything. So you have to measure important things that you already know are important, and also interesting things that is very, very important to do, because that implements a constant development of the organization and process. You are looking for things that are interesting, and you are looking for possibility of measuring them and trying to establish what is the impact on the final product. So that's what you do. Important, interesting, and changeable. Even if some of the parameters are interesting and they are not being able to be changed, you will, if you follow them, you can follow them just to know them, but keeping in mind that if you follow them and you cannot change them, and you see that they are important, then you can either be frustrated or make a huge change. So that's an issue. That obviously, what is the most important? Create the plan, create the process map, define the parameters at the end, so the product parameters, and during the process, so the processual parameters, and try to find a way to measure them in a way that you will not feel, overwhelmed by the number of the things that you are measuring. The second group of aspects that we are going to talk about are the different types of processes in comparison to the main process, especially the parallel processes and crossing processes. The parallel processes are easy to imagine if you look, for example, at university activities, where some of the activities are within the hospital for the patients and some are for the students. So those two processes are parallel. They are providing the service for two different groups of clients. They are providing money from two different groups of clients, and they are different in terms of characteristics. There can be also parallel processes within the same department. For example, comparing different groups of patients, different organ units. There are different patients, different diseases, and different approach, although structuralized in more the same way. If you look at the organizations such as a gas station, you see that there is a selling of gas itself as one of the processes, but also you can sell the candies and alcohol in the shop, or you can provide the car wash. So there are three different processes that are providing a diversified source of income. So normally the parallel processes are created in this way to provide the diversified source of income for the organization. That's business perspective. So it's safer to have different ways of approach than just different types of clients than just one, because this will potentially, this will create risk that if one group of clients is not willing to buy from us, our business can go bankrupt. And if we have three different groups, there is also always a chance that the other areas will support and the first area will grow up again. The parallel processes can also be created basing on some kind of mission of the organization or potential of the organization. In these situations, there can be, well, on one hand, good, because we are having a very wide perspective on the market, and for example, we can say that we are able to treat three different groups of patients, and that's fine because all the common costs are shared between those three processes. But on the other hand, there can be a competition between processes in order to gain the resources, such as an access to operating theater or hospital beds, which are needed for all the processes. And then there becomes a problem. Of course, there are technical and statistical methods to evaluate and compare those processes and to define which are better to be supported higher or lower. But obviously, that sometimes has to be balanced on the level of the mission of the organization. So you see the parallel processes, once again, are the different similar processes in the organization that provide income for the organization, that create the chance for diversity of income, but they can also create the risk of competition between the competition between the processes in order to obtain the resources that can be limited. The other type of processes that are not main process are the crossing processes, and those are the processes that are itself not providing the income of the organization, because no one is really paying directly. There is no client paying directly, client from outside of the organization paying directly for those services, but they are immanent. They have to be done in order to provide the service that is being paid for. So as you see in this picture, there are things such as cleaning or pharmacy or operating rooms, anesthesia, sterilization or billing that are mandatory to fulfill the whole process, the main process, but they are not itself being paid for directly by the client. So those crossing processes are important because sometimes they determine perception of our main process by the client. So if you go to a very fancy, elegant Michelin restaurant and you know that the food is perfect there, but if you go to a toilet and it's very dirty and the waiters are rude, then despite the quality of the food, you say, well, my experience was not too good, right? So I'm not really happy with what I gained for the money that I paid. So the quality was bad, although the quality of the main process was very high. So you see that the crossing processes have to be controlled by the main process, because actually the client for the crossing processes is the main process. So the main process should be, well, then we come to the same definition. So the crossing processes should define the demands of the main process and should follow fulfillment of those processes. As you see, definition of expectations, what do we really need as the main process, and evaluate the fulfillment. So did we really manage to do it? It is not so easy because, it's in such an organization as a hospital, it's difficult to implement this understanding. Then somebody is a crossing process, so not really the main process, and this person, this group of people, this department should define the expectations and try to follow follow the fulfillment of those expectations, just to confirm and present that we are indeed doing exactly what the main process wants because we've defined it. This is also the place where we pose all the earliest procedures. So if you have an organization that you want to organize in a way that there is no big quarrels about the communication and what somebody thought that the other want, put the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, exactly at those crossroads, because this is the most fierce, the most sparkling place, most fireworks and fires will actually happen in these areas. So that's good thing to start working with it. Also, if you look at the characteristics of the medical process, there is an important aspect of the sub-process, which is the delayed evaluation, follow-up. And those parameters, because obviously, if you look at the main process that is being finished at the moment of the end of hospitalization, you receive different information that the ones that can be obtained from the long-term follow-up. And clinically, the long-term follow-up is very important because this is actually the place that we receive the information, whether the effects of our works are stable in time. So that's another issue that has to be kept in mind as a very important aspect. We have already covered the basic concepts about the quality and main process and parallel and crossing processes, and now let's take into more complicated issues, such as the differentiation between the clients and stakeholders. Well, the clients are, practically speaking, those who pay for the main process. So in the European system, the problem that we can obtain is that the client of the main process is not patient himself. He is beneficiary of the process, but the client is the National Health Service, who is paying for the service that we are providing, and who is actually also setting his requirements, which sometimes can not go hand to hand with the requirements and the expectations of the patients. So, for example, if we look at the limitations of the fund of the hospital, well, the beneficiaries, the patients would like to have the unlimited access to services, while the client, the National Health Service, says, no, we cannot exceed this at this number because this is above the budget and we will not be able to pay for it. So here we have a quite complex situation of the conflict of interest between the clients and the beneficiaries that are being represented by the client. So a little bit of ethical issues because, for example, the doctors and nurses are willing to provide as many help to the patients as it is needed, while this is being, limited by the financial context. So you see, that becomes quite complex idea, and obviously is not so easy to, of course, we don't have enough time to talk about those issues because they change from time. There are different legislations. There are parts which are unlimited, some parts are limited, and that is obviously a huge science about that, or huge, at least informative science. The second aspect, and that is quite important in the processual approach, and actually not so political, fortunately, is the context of non-conformities, and that's what happens in every organization. I think you've already heard about it in the first video that we were talking about the non-conformities issue, and then that there should be a rule about how to deal with non-conformities. What are actually those non-conformities? It is anything that I do not agree that happens in my surroundings. So this can be anything. It obviously can be something clinical, so I don't agree that my patients have the suppuration of the wound and I want to work with it. There can be something that is against the law, so the country doesn't agree that it is allowed to drive with 150 kilometers per hour, and this is non-conformity, and you can be penalized for that. And also, if we create the internal rule that everybody is wearing, for example, the scrubs with short sleeves, and somebody comes with long sleeves, this is also non-conformity because we all agreed that this will be our internal rule. So non-conformity is something I do not agree for. It can be me, it can be the patient, and can be the supplier, it can be anybody in the hospital or in the area of the hospital care that is anybody can say, this is what I don't agree. Patients do, or families all very often do it. So, for example, they do not agree for the autopsy of the patient, and we are trying to convince them, showing the evidence that it is important, but we also have to measure the number of those non-conformities that. And try to say, is the number okay because this is within the reasonable limit of benchmark, or there should be some more actions such as informative action or some kind of downsizing of emotions, and different things can be done with non-conformities. Actually, non-conformities are a great thing for the quality management system because they provide the energy for those perpetual quality improvement, for those damming circle that we will see in another video to roll and roll and roll, because this is the only chance that we learn. If we know nothing about the system, everybody says, okay, it's bad, but we won't tell, then nothing will change. We will just keep on suffering and suffering and suffering and being more and more frustrated. So obviously, to define non-conformities, we have to define the rules, the documentation of the process. Documentation of a process is, practically speaking, a plan how we should work. What are the rules of work? What are the rules of processing? And the confirmation of processing are the records. So those are those things that we were talking about at the beginning. Oh, why do we have to note the same thing that we've done? We've done it, it's sufficient. Yes, but if we don't record it, we just cannot learn from it. Because if we record it day after day and everything's okay, that's fine. But one day there will be some kind of non-conformity, outlier, a number or a fact that is out of the schedule of the plan, which can be better or bad or good, because actually the non-conformity can be a stimulation for a change of concept and can be a big step forward for the organization. So every organization with QMS should have the non-conformity system that enables collecting data about non-conformities, different levels, can be also anonymous, and the organization should respond to those non-conformities. First of all, just with a comment saying, okay, I know that it happened, I will think about it, and then regularly trying to evaluate what is important. So the non-conformities should be stratified, and if they are very important or systematic or systemic, then we should perform something which is called root cause analysis. So trying to find why it happened, not who did it, but why it happened. It's a rule of 5 times why, that you ask why and why and why and why and why, and then you obtain information about the root causes. Sometimes it's easier or sometimes it's more difficult, but that's how you should be doing it. And basing on that, you can come to the root cause of the whole problem, because changing the root cause may have the only chance to impact the final result of it. More of the quality management system is devoted to the standard operating procedures, which are the particular rules of action in a very particular context. The second thing that we'll be talking about are quality improvement projects, which are the results of root cause analysis, and they are the plans for implementing change in the organization. So those two aspects are the most sophisticated and advanced, at least at the level that we are now talking about. So standard operating procedures are parts of the documentation of the process. So they are a plan for activity, but they are the plan of activity that are connected very strongly with context of clinical activity. So they are usually developed by the teams that specialize in certain areas of medicine. And they are developed in two contexts. First of all, as the source are the standard, well, obviously the activity that the team performs with such a group of the patients, such as stroke patients, for example, but also the current guidelines. And those two lines of information have to clash together, so we develop a very contemporary SOP for activity with certain group of patients. Sometimes it turns out that our routine that has been there for months and years is far away from what has been discovered recently. So that's important that we reevaluate and we change, if it's needed, the SOPs every now and then, and practically now and then means every year. So every year we should have a look at all of our SOPs within the team that works with, for example, stroke patients, and say, all right, everything works fine. There is no change in guidelines. There is no current publication that could change our perspective. And also, there is a very good result of the process. So we are happy. So the product is good within the benchmark, within the area of success. We cannot tell that something goes wrong. We also evaluate the level of the implementation of SOP. That means that we take a randomly number of cases, around 10 cases, that should be following the SOP about the stroke, for example, and we compare what happened in reality with what has been planned to happen. So that's why you need the records to be able to refer to it. And if the organization, if the people are working not along this SOP, that means there is something wrong. It doesn't mean that they are wrong, but it may mean that SOP is not adequate. So we have to reevaluate it once again. And SOPs are also the lines, the patient pathways that the patient are set for in order to obtain health after the intervention, after the process, after the treatment in the hospital. So they are the most advanced and sophisticated lines of procedural approach, and they have to be, as I said, re-evaluated according to the sources and according to the results. And that should be done regularly, not less frequently, once a year. And the second aspect that I want to tell you about in this fourth part is the quality improvement projects. So the quality improvement projects arise from root cause analysis, from 5 times why questions that come to an idea that something goes wrong, and that results in many other aspects of the organization activity. And the plan has to be set, and the most very important aspect is that we have to set or measure the initial parameters that we want to change. So it has to be parameterized. It has to be evaluated with numbers. So we will be able to tell after the intervention in terms of quality improvement, after the intervention, that there has been a change that we expected or not, because of course not every quality improvement project is successful. So that is very important. There has to be a route to obtain it, and there has to be an evaluation on a step basis, because we don't want to wake up 1 year later saying we're doing the same mistake, despite we've done the quality improvement project, but we never had time to make it happen or to do it properly. So it is very important, and it is really making the change. So it has to be well designed. There has to be somebody responsible for it. There is the whole big part of scientific approach that gives you the possibility to make it happen properly. Yeah, but it needs a little bit of work to make it happen. Now I would like to show you another video that gives us another interesting perspective on everything that we're learning about right today.
What is a QMS? Let's start with the basics. Your organization already has several systems in place to keep it operating, such as a financial management system, environmental management system, energy management system, safety management system, and a quality management system, or QMS. Your organization has many different interested parties that each require different things from your organization. For example, customers, employees, vendors, and regulatory agencies each have their own requirements that your organization must fulfill. These different interested parties are sometimes called stakeholders. A quality management system is a system that ensures you meet each of these requirements. In very basic terms, a QMS requires that you say what you do, document your QMS, do what you say, follow that documentation, prove it, audit, and improve it. The phrase quality management system, or QMS, is used to describe this system as well as the actual documents that describe the system. A QMS does this by understanding the different requirements of each interested party. Your customer requires a certain level of quality or needs a specific quantity by a certain deadline. At the same time, your employees need a safe place to work, and the local government agency requires your organization to follow current environmental laws. Wasting time or money will reduce profitability and increase costs, which can have a negative impact on the longevity of your organization. Once you understand all of these different requirements, you can determine what needs to be done. This is process. And how it needs to be done. This is the procedure. Ensuring resources are available. Your organization must ensure it has what it needs to correctly perform all the processes. This includes employee training and competence, as well as equipment and facility-related items. Making your product or performing your service. Your organization can now operate using the processes and procedures you have identified with the resources that you have put in place. Checking to ensure your processes and procedures were done correctly. In order to prove that you have done everything correctly, you must measure, monitor, and document what you are doing. These documents become the record of what has been done. Reviewing and improving. Auditing the records will help ensure processes were followed, and you should continually look for opportunities in your processes to see where you can improve your system. Each of these components, not just the documents, are what make a quality management system. A QMS does not change how your organization operates or your recipe for success. It just puts controls in place so that you follow your recipe every time and take action if there is an error. With a QMS in place, you do everything on purpose and for a reason. Some of the many benefits of having a QMS in place are happy customers. You'll have happy customers, employees, shareholders, etc. by delivering a more consistent product or service using well-documented processes and procedures. Your interested parties will be happy because their requirements have been met. Reducing waste. Your organization will have less wasted time and materials. By only doing what is needed, your processes will be more efficient. Engaged employees. By helping employees understand how to meet the stakeholder requirements, they will feel they are members of the team sharing a common goal. Having employees who are engaged is critical to the improvement of your operations. Reducing risk. There will be less risk for all stakeholders. Intentional planning to meet requirements and a proactive approach to addressing mistakes will mitigate your risks. One example is the documentation of processes so that critical information will not get lost in a personnel change. Better planning. You will not fail to deliver a product or service. By understanding customer requirements before you start, your organization can make sure it is able to meet those requirements before getting started, or inform the customer otherwise. With a QMS properly in place, your organization will save time and money and improve consistency, all while reducing risk. This leads to happy customers, happy employees, and a stronger, more efficient organization. Thank you for watching. Please visit our website for more information.
Okay, so now let's have a little bit of training in the funny process of baking bread. We'll try to define the process, we'll try to define the measures, and have a look how it works in such a simple area as producing bread. And we'll find how universal is this approach. So first of all, we have to define our clients, because we want to produce bread. But first, we have to find out whether there is anybody interested in this. And of course, there are lots of people who want to buy good bread, and we would like to know what are the expectations. So maybe we should use some technology in terms of internet technology to find out what are the new trends, what are what people want, whether there is something special about the bread that we could put on market, there is a niche that we could take over. But obviously, let's say we are going to sell bread, and then we have to find out about something about our process. So maybe we are not extremely experienced bakers, but we know that the whole process will be divided into a collection of ingredients, then preparing the dough. The dough has to ripen, and then we will bake the bread itself, and then we will have to distribute it, because it's not so easy to find the clients, and in the place that we are. So we have to bring the bread to the clients themselves. It obviously can be very complicated or very easy, but let's make it very easy that we are going to bring this bread directly to the shops, and then the shops will go on with it. Then if you were very careful in listening, you would say, all right, so your clients are not indeed those who eat the bread, but those who sell the bread. So that becomes more complicated, as you see, and then maybe the demands and expectations of the clients will be different than those of the clients that would eat the bread itself. So selling and eating can be different. But all right, let's not worry. Let's just try to build the map. Normally, this kind of building the map process takes, well, basing on the process that is already in place, takes a day, more or less. And if you want to create your company, because we are just about to create a company, this may take longer. This can be a spark, an idea, but to create the whole flow, it can take days or sometimes months, depending on the situation. But obviously, has to be very careful. You see, at the level of the client definition, there can be differences between me and my business partner saying, let's go to the clients directly, and he says or she says, no, let's go to the shops. We don't have money for the distribution. It's better to just to bake and bring to the shops instead of bake and distribute, because then you need more workforce. People have to be there. You have to have shops or maybe trucks or whatever that you will be selling it from. And if you want to sell from the truck, that means you cannot have one truck for distribution, but you have to have many. So we see in every level there are possibilities of variance, and this variance will determine the potential effectiveness of your business and the success. But anyway, okay, so what do we do at the beginning? We have to have how much bread, have to have information how much bread will potentially be sold, and that's the input data. And at the output there has to be a bread provided to the shop, and the quality of this product, so the product parameters, have to be defined according to the information that we know from the clients or consumers evaluation chart. So it has to be fresh, and has to be nice, and has to be smelling very nice. So all of those things should be in place. Okay, so we also have to define what should be collected, what kind of resources we need, what is the characteristics of these resources, and we also have to evaluate the process of collection, because we cannot spend months collecting the resources. We just have to have it acting fast. So the time of collecting and the price will be also important, but maybe the source of the ingredients is also important. The sustainable and sustained business may be appreciated by our clients who are going to buy the bread. Then we have the parameters connected with the preparation of the dough, and that will be technical thing, which way or how long it should be melted or stirred or whatever. And then the ripening of the dough, it's very important, the temperature of the room and the airflow and the humidity, special type of conditions that we have to follow, so that is also important. Then the baking aspect, so the time, temperature, characteristic of the fire, is it from above, is it thermocircling or whatever, it is important. And then we have the product, and if we depending on characteristics of our business case, the distribution context can be different. But let's imagine we're just taking this to the shops, and that means that there should be a provider of service for us that is bringing us the transportation. Then we have to evaluate the quality of this provider, and maybe there should be enough cars, there should be good hygienic standard and speed of work, because if they have just one car and there is something wrong with this car, like some kind of repair is needed, then with no alternative, they will not be able to provide it. And despite the fact they will pay us fine, our business can collapse because we can lose credibility in our buyers, in our clients. So you see a lot of things. Let's just have a short overview of it. Procedures of baking bread is divided in those 5 sub processes: collection, preparation, ripening, baking, distribution. And within each of those sub processes there can be procedures in place, and there should be adequate records in place, so we know that everything is according to time, and we can define the parameters that are essential for the success of each of the parts of the process, and finally for the whole process itself. So small pieces added together, they create a big thing. And that is actually within every of the parts of the process, and also the criteria of change between sub-processes have to be defined, so we know that we are ready to do something further down. So we are ready to release the product, release the bread for the distribution. Obviously, all the non-conformities that arise from what we've done should be recorded, and then they can add to the improvement of the quality management system that we have in place. And all of those things have to be collected and evaluated, because maybe we prolonged time of ripening and maybe something got better or worse. I have an experience of witnessing my friend's pizza organization when he was looking for the ideal pizza dough, and preparing the pizza dough has 1,000 different recipes. And despite the fact that all the ingredients are very simple, they can really vary in quality. And even 5 minutes of ripening, or half degree of Celsius of temperature of ripening of the dough can change everything. An amount of water, it should be 60 or 50% of 30, and some before, some after. Extremely sophisticated science. So you see so many aspects of preparation that can actually impact the final effect, whether the pizza will be crispy or will be soft or will be tasty or untasty, and that is really, really important. So you see, it's in every business, creating the processual map with in defining the indicators on the go will add to your understanding of the process. And it's the same in medicine, and the same in pizza business, and the same in car manufacturing. If you understand the process, you are able to change it and improve it. If you just follow it without reflection, if you follow it believing that you're just doing good job and not evaluating it, that means that you just don't know if you're doing good job. You just know that you do a job, but you don't know if it's good. So you see, there are different parameters that can be numerically evaluated: time, money, temperature, characteristic, color, hardness, and that adds to the final effect that is being evaluated finally by your clients, and they buy it or do not buy it. And if they don't buy it, you're simply not being able to continue your business. Of course, if you look at the breadth issue, it seems funny, but well, I would say very complex issue. But if you go back to hospital, there are many and many and many different potential parameters that have to be involved in the processual map. And again, coming back to one of the first aspects that we were discussing, number one said, let's control the parameters, but only those who are important, who are interesting, or who are changeable. You cannot control every aspect because, first of all, your personnel will get really frustrated. You can do some of the things electronically or automatically, but still there will need to be some control above it because some technical problems can result in misunderstanding. And the second thing is that you will obtain such a huge mass of information that in this ocean of data, you will not be able to get any easy conclusions. Sometimes you have to simplify your idea, your concluding, because otherwise you will just not be able to do anything, right? Of course, artificial intelligence and some kind of machine learning can help you, but this is sophisticated, advanced, and you have to have money to invest in your organization to do it. And maybe that's a good idea for future, but not for the beginning of the quality journey. And just at the end, I would like to invite you for a video by doctor from Toronto, Dr. Evans, who is actually preparing wonderful videos on different clinical aspects, different algorithms of activities. And if you have time, just have a look at his YouTube channel. It's really very, very nice. It's making the complex things being very understandable and easy to follow. And he also spent some time preparing a video about the healthcare quality improvement and what is it all about. I think after this lecture that you listened today to, you will be able to follow all the things that he's talking about, and I think that he will show you also a lot of clinical examples how to improve and how to prove that quality management system in healthcare can be beneficial for both the patients and the personnel. Let's have a look together.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Evans, and today's talk is on quality improvement, or QI, in healthcare. So I suppose the first question is, why should you or I care about quality improvement? I mean, to be honest, it sounds a bit boring. Something a CEO would have on her or his corporate objectives. But actually, if you dig a little deeper, it's pretty cool. Maybe more of a philosophy or an attitude about how to make something better. And now that I think about it, it's really the attitude I'm looking for in my patients. The ability and desire to tweak their habits, seeing if this change improves their life, and if it does, to try and make it standard practice. You see, for my patients to make these changes requires skills, but it's also an outlook. The humility and self-awareness to say, I've got room for improvement. The ability to gather better approaches, try them on and see if they work, and then adapt them until they do. Well, if my patients can do that, I think they deserve the same from us in the healthcare business. So I suppose the next question is, if we have the attitude, how do we actually improve? How do we use QI to make care better? Well, the improvement business has been around for a while. Organizations like Toyota and Bell Labs and leaders like Walter Shewart W. Edwards Deming and Joseph Juran polished and simplified the science of improvement. And then along came a pediatrician named Don Berwick, and he wondered if we could translate the science of building better cars or electronics to healthcare. Dr. Berwick also wondered if there were lessons about systems we could learn from the kids he saw in his clinic.
The systems thinker is a perpetually curious person who never thinks they have the whole answer, but is always willing to know what the next step to take is. If you watch a child, you'll see this happen. Children in their growth and development are innately systems thinkers. They're always trying the next thing. They're probing the material. They're listening to the noise. They're thinking about what the next thing to do is, and they're not in the job of solving problems forever. They're in the job of taking the next step. I think those are elements of what it means to be a system thinker. At the core of it is constant curiosity about a world that you will never understand fully, but you might take the next step to understand a little better.
Okay, we've never dropped a vid into our vids, and Don is thoughtful, so I kind of thought it might improve our messaging. Let me know if you thought it did or didn't in our YouTube comments. Now, Dr. Berwick went on to co-found the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, or the IHI, and started focusing on the low-hanging healthcare improvement fruit, which is mostly reducing errors. For example, in Canada, a researcher named Ross Baker led a study in 2004 that showed of 2.5 million annual hospital admissions, about 13.5% were having adverse events, with 1 in 5 of those people dying or experiencing a permanent disability. In the US, the Institute of Medicine estimated that 44 to 98,000 people were dying from preventable errors every year. That's up to 4 jumbo jet crashes per week. Often these are errors we know how to prevent, but as is often the case, knowing what's the right thing to do and actually doing it are two different things. In 2006, Berwick and his colleagues challenged hundreds of U.S. hospitals to bridge this gap and felt strongly that some is not a number and soon is not a time, and so set the goal of saving 100,000 lives in 18 months. They started with this simple notion: every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. So how do you change the result? Well, you change the system that produces it. Changing the system requires change agents, and in my province we launched Health Quality Ontario. HQO and orgs like it recognize that it's tough to balance proactive and reactive care in the field. But if they can help or incentivize or nudge us towards a more reflective practice and improve outcomes, we can actually create a better user experience for us all. Now, making this sound simple, like pushing a button, but getting people to change, even a simple behavior like hand washing, can be very complex and exasperating. But these seemingly small behaviors can have a ripple effect on health. A 2010 study calculated inadequate hand washing caused 247 deaths each day from preventable hospital infections, and that's just in the US. So let's jump back to simplicity. How to improve seems to boil down to 3 questions in a cycle. Improvement starts by setting an aim. So question number 1 is, what are you going to improve, and by how much? So for example, we are going to get 70% of the staff to wash their hands before and after seeing patients by December 1st. Great. We have an aim. So let's start testing some changes, okay? Not so fast. Now you need to ask question 2. How will you know if a change is an improvement? We need to choose some things and measure them. What is doable and reliable? And that will tell us if the changes we are making are leading to an improvement. Is someone documenting doctor or nurse hand washing? Is it self-report? Is it the amount of soap and disinfectant used? Okay, we have an aim, and now we have some measures. Next up is question 3. What changes can you make that will lead to the improvement? To start, we just want to test one change with something called a PDSA cycle. Plan the test, do the test, study the test results, and then act based on those results. Maybe it's new soap dispensers or little bottles of gel. Maybe you read about the study that changed the signage from wash your hands to protect yourself to wash your hands to protect your patients, which resulted in a 3rd improvement over a 2-week period. Maybe it's reward or audit and feedback or asking patients to check. Just pick one and get started. Then you test other changes and the PDSAs just keep rolling. Fine-tuning the change based on what you're learning. Saying to yourself, here are some ways we can improve. Let's try them out by dropping them into our practice in a thoughtful way that fits with our clinic and our patients. And let's measure how we do. Adapt, adopt, or discard. Simple, right? But powerful, and it actually works. At my hospital, St. Michael's in Toronto, elderly patients with fractured hips were often waiting more than 2 days for surgery. This wait was painful, with increased chances of conditions like delirium and depression, longer recovery times, and even death. The care team scratched their chins, mapped out and redesigned every step of the journey to surgery in order to fast-track these patients. They created a code HIP called as soon as the patient arrives. This streamlined them to the urgent list for surgery, rapid triage, essential testing, priority consults from anesthesia and internal medicine, and so on. All these tweaks led to a jump from 66 to over 90% having surgery within 48 hours. Now, these changes don't happen without engaging the human side of change. One thing you'll discover is that it's possible that the people you work with might not be as into hand washing or urine infections or diabetes as you are. I know, crazy, but this leads to 3 pieces of advice. First is the concept of innovation fatigue. Often your workmates are getting overloaded with requests for practice change, which are well-intentioned but can be overwhelming. My own approach is to take a page from motivational interviewing. MI recognizes some of our natural inclination as problem solvers is to fix things, provide advice, and argue for change. But the reality is that not everybody is ready for change. Both MI and QI recognize that ambivalence about change is normal, that building readiness and confidence for change, a shared agenda, requires careful listening and strategic questioning, the ability to roll with resistance, more of a dance than a directive, I would say. Actually, sometimes resistance to change can actually be an opportunity in QI. Creating diversity or disruption can actually be an opportunity, something to build on. My second point is about priorities. I think we have to acknowledge that patients and your fellow clinicians may have certain priorities on the day. That talking about depression or headaches may trump your diabetes flow sheet, or even that focusing on their non-diabetes issue might, in fact, be more helpful for patient self-management. These shifting sands that transition from silo care are the reality of the emerging science of complex care. Sure, asking what's the matter, but also asking what matters to you. A great example is in Timmins, a small town in rural Ontario, where they wondered if they could do a better job of handling complex patients in the emergency department. So people seen in the emergency more than 14 times or admitted more than 3 times a year. They started with standard assessment tools, identified diagnoses and related problems, generated care plans, but unfortunately, patient use didn't decrease. The team then flipped their approach to what's called patient discovery, where they identified health and lifestyle challenges from the patient's perspective and combined that discovery with motivational interviewing techniques. This new patient-centered approach resulted in more than an 80% reduction in emergency room use and admissions. Finally, after having done many interventions, my mantra is, how can I make it easier to do the right thing? Maybe easier is about sharing the load. At Kaiser Permanente, front desk staff can actually check and book for preventive screening. Everyone can help in QI. All these point to the softer side of good quality improvement. That when we look at the science of innovation, it's less about big cognitive leaps and more about agility and small incremental steps that build on the ideas of others and engage our own genuine curiosity regarding what motivates and inhibits the individual and system's path to change. The main point is, start. Find something you can improve and get going. Look, it's hard to summarize improvement and not get into bumper sticker territory, but I would advise not to let what you can't do stop you from what you can do. It's time to entertain complexity, but focus on simplicity, asking yourself, what can I do by next Tuesday? Have a meaningful needle and test some changes to start moving that needle towards an important goal. Hope this helps, and thanks.
All right, thank you very much for listening to the material I prepared for you guys. I think it was interesting and will stimulate and motivate you to think about the quality management system in a way which is a little bit different than the boring picture at the beginning. Maybe it can make a substantial change with small steps. Thank you.